I am here with Tracee Theisen-Henny. Tracee, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Who booked this?
I'm glad you made the trip to the podcast studio.
It took me a while to get here. There was a lot of traffic. I'm just turning you up so I can hear you a little better. Okay.
Well, yeah, having 5 bulldogs, that is traffic in the house.
Yeah, that is definitely it's definitely a log jam. Definitely. There's definitely rush hour.
You are very experienced in dealing with creatives who struggle with getting things done sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of experience with someone very familiar to everyone. You are, as I refer to you in different circles, you are my biggest client. And obviously my most important client, of course. But I've learned a lot about not only working with you, but also having a staff of productive creatives and seeing how they, perform, which way is a better way to help them perform to their biggest potential. And I'm not saying I haven't made mistakes along the way. Definitely was a learning curve, but definitely now I have it pretty locked up on how productive creatives operate. And you know what? I've mentioned this before really quick. It came from also experience in my previous life in the radio world of broadcasting, marketing, and sales and events, working with on-air personalities who are oftentimes productive creatives in their own right, because some of them are not only radio personalities, they're TV personalities, or they do a lot of endorsements, or they're sports figures, or things like that. So I've had a lot of training over the years to work with you all.
And you use that word productive creative because the problem with creatives often isn't that they're just sitting around doing nothing. They're productive, but it tends to be a bit all over the place.
Yeah, actually, it's quite the contrary. Okay. Usually there's way too much going on, and that is the challenge. But that is also the positive of productive creatives. They have a lot of ideas, a lot of good ideas, some in a lot of the in different stages. So it's a good thing, but I think the challenge for them and what brings them I don't want to refer to them as them. What brings productive creatives to the forefront of the biggest frustration is just not being able to get things done, because I find that there's a lot of projects that have been started, very few have been finished. And also, productive creatives like the bright, shiny, fun parts. There's sometimes work to be done. I mentioned this actually today in a mastermind that I hosted about, when it gets to the hard work, oftentimes that's when we take a break and move to the other idea that's in the fun part. And a lot of times when it comes to productive or creative projects, there's a lot of planning that has to go into it. Either on the back end, the front end, or in actually all front, back, in between, all that. There's a lot of planning, and that's not fun. And also, a lot of times when you're working on a project, something I'm working on with someone right now who's putting together an audio book, you get to the end of a certain part of the project, like this person got to the end of a chapter, and it was time for feedback. And sometimes the feedback is not always fun. And so that sometimes will stall a productive creative. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad, just sometimes you have to fix things and all of that. And that's just not always the fun part of things. And that's where I find that productive creative gets stalled. Also, they get stalled with just starting. How do I start? Is a big part of it.
And the thing, you work as an accountability coach. You work with creatives, you work with voice teachers, but as part of voiceschool.com, you're officially the accountability coach. Yep. And it's not necessarily projects, but it's helping singers progress and have goals and be accountable. Maybe talk a bit about how you work with singers in that regard.
Well, my moniker, which is my name, truthful, realistic accountability coaching with effective encouragement. I am very much a believer of keeping it positive, but also sometimes you need someone to tell you, hey, you got to do it this way. Like I said recently in a recap, listen, take 20 minutes, Everyone's got 20 minutes. Don't get me. Everyone's got 20 minutes. Sometimes you need somebody to sort of lay it out for you and get you out of your own head, and just also show you that planning it out or holding you accountable or getting the next goal finished isn't that crazy of an idea. It can get done. It just takes a little bit of organization. And sometimes, like I said, you have to have somebody point it out to you and just kind of spell it out very simply. And another thing that I work with folks on is just what's the next step. Instead of making it seem like there's all kinds of steps and this is a big project and I don't know what to do next, how about just what's one step forward? We recently worked on this with a group of folks. What is one step forward towards getting it done? So we just simplify, and that seems to help people. And also too, feedback. You know, if you're working on projects or you're setting goals, you've got to have a community that is supportive and gives you feedback, and a place where you can mention feedback, wins or challenges, if you will. And that's one thing I have to say about Voice School that I really love is our beautiful community of people that are very supportive and celebrate wins, and also when there are setbacks, are supportive of that time. We all go through that, but you have to keep moving forward with positive momentum if you want to get goals achieved. That's just the bottom line. And as I always say, especially using an example of writing a book, if you have an idea for a book and you're writing it and it's in a drawer, it's not a book. It's not a book. It's not a project. It's not a goal. It's not a finish. It's not a song. It's not anything until it gets published, until it's out there for your community to experience. And that's what I keep telling everybody is that is the biggest hurdle, is you've got to get it finished. Even if you revise it or change it or update it or completely decide I'm going to go in a different direction, you've got to finish it and get feedback. Feedback is all important and part of the process.
And one thing you're really big on is the calendar.
Oh, yes. You love that calendar, don't you?
No, I don't. I hate that calendar. But
let's make this interesting. Let's talk about the calendar for the book that just came out, the Mature Singer's Guidebook, that we put together it was like a 3-month period. It was very aggressive, but we had goals. We had certain marketing goals that we went, again, super quick, folks, talking about planning it out. We had to plan, we almost had to start from the published date and work backwards, because we had certain goals for a certain time of year with a certain group of folks and how we wanted to do this. So we actually figured out the published date first and then worked backwards from there. And that put us into about a 3-month period, not only because we were trying to be aggressive, which we were, but also it was where we were at the time. Once we established that date and we worked backwards, we were actually pretty much having to start pretty quickly. And we put the goals on the calendar and I checked them off. And I was often, as the accountability coach for that project, I was often argued with and told it's not going to happen. And I ignored that person. But I digress. I'll let you talk about coming from the other side, being the productive creative, working on a project and being held accountable, and what that experience was for you, knowing that not only did you set dates and it was on a calendar where we could both see it every day, but also too, knowing that the finished product had things attached to it that we had to get it done by that date or other things would be delayed. So you talk about that.
For me, the dates were aggressive but realistic. But what the dates didn't take into account is when you go into resistance and when you go into decision fatigue. And that's the thing that I find with any big project, with any goal, is there are decisions that have to be made. And when you make a decision, you are closing the door on the alternatives. And that is hard very often as a creative. And I find that having accountability, someone like you, forces me to make these decisions because they have to be made. If they're not made, it's going to languish.
Right. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you as usual, but I just want to say this. Alternatives are often huge roadblocks for productive creatives because they get lost in the alternatives. Overthinking. The goal is to get it done. And why did we need to get this book done to a certain extent? Because part of that was the first draft, which gave us what? Feedback. We had to get that draft done by a certain date so that we could give people enough time to test read and give us feedback so we could keep moving forward. And if you kept getting stuck in the alternatives, we never would have got to that point. So I really want to make that clear to folks that are listening, that it wasn't just a bunch of dates and, oh, we got this done and that. There were other things along the way where we were bringing in collaborative groups to help us with our project, meaning our test readers for that particular example, that we had to get things done. And if you got stuck in the alternatives forever, you wouldn't have given our collaborative group enough time to give us the proper feedback. And so that's part of the process. Go ahead.
And the thing is, when you face the alternatives can be great. And it really comes down to, you just got to choose and you got to move forward. And having somebody I had to be accountable to, having dates on the calendar, made me make decisions. And the other decisions could have been correct as well, but I made a decision I could move forward, because the decision fatigue and the resistance, you forced me to break through it. And accountability coaching is actually, at its most powerful, very simple.
Yeah. Did you get it done or not? And if
I got it done. And we actually, if you'd have asked me halfway through the project, would I hit the date, right? The completion date, the deadline, I would have said no way. And
well, you were saying no way. You were, but really quick.
I was.
Everyone who's listening, he was saying no way. If you would have interviewed us separately, he would have said, I'm not gonna. And I would have said, oh, we're gonna hit it. There was no way. And again, now part of this is tactics to get things done, by the way, you guys. If you have things that are pending that being published, like I said, we had marketing objectives and we couldn't let those objectives, they couldn't be delayed for that long. Okay. Could we have waited a week? Okay. Yeah. I'm going to be honest. Yes, but not too long, because we had marketing objectives that really mattered. Okay. So there was no way I was going to let this be delayed. So it would have been interesting if you would have done a separate interview, maybe like a month or two in, because I'm sure John would have said, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to make it. And he did at one point. And then at one point, the editor got back to us sooner than we expected. We were ahead at one point. And then we were back on track.
Yeah.
You know, we weren't going to release it ahead of time. We were going to stick with that date. Also, too, I want to make something clear, because I just thought of this too. When you are putting together a timeline for a project, you do have to give yourself an opportunity for some buffers. Okay? Because you know that life is going to happen, or especially if you're doing something where you're using your voice or you're performing, you need rest. I'm talking to you if you're a performer doing things or trying to put maybe a project together, recording a CD or whatever you're doing, you have to give yourself buffers. And we did do that to a certain extent. They were realistic, but at the same time, that also means that you got that in your plan. So you can't turn around and change the dates. You got to hold yourself accountable. It also prevents chaos. Okay? Because, I mean, John, let's be honest. You can easily go into chaos, especially when you're writing a book.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're doing a big project, it's thousands of decisions. You're constantly making decisions. And even when learning to sing, you're constantly making decisions. You can't learn to scream metal, belt musical theater, sing jazz, develop your mix, correct your intonation. You can't do all of these in a day. You have to actually have a plan and a structure. And having the plan and having the deadlines and having accountability, it not only cuts through that clutter, it also creates and sustains momentum. And if you lose momentum on a large project, it's like that thing in the fridge that you maybe don't eat for a day, and then you don't eat it for another day, and then you're just like, ugh, I'm not ready to throw that out, but I don't think I want to eat it anymore. It ends up being thrown out. It ends up and I was thinking about your client today who just finished a massive project,
Mhm.
and he said if it wasn't for you, this thing would have languished, half finished on a hard drive forever.
Mhm. It is a
So
project he's been wanting to do for a long time. And I will tell you guys, it wasn't a formal situation when we first talked about it. We worked together previously. We just kind of reconnected and we're talking about what are you doing these days? And I just kind of mentioned it like, well, listen, if you have some free time, I really encourage you to work on that story because, what are you waiting for kind of a thing. And I think that there'd be interest and all this, all the things. And I honestly, when we got off the Zoom call, did not expect too much of it. It was just nice to connect. It really was a simple connection. There wasn't an agenda. I didn't know about the project prior to that Zoom call. And what happened, which was really interesting, is maybe I think about a week later, I got an email that said, okay, here's chapter 1. Can you listen to it and give me your feedback? And I thought, okay, I mean, I'll give you my feedback. I can't say that I'm an expert at all this, but just the fact that somebody was listening and just giving real feedback. And some of the story for this individual is very intimate details of their feelings. And there's great ups and downs in the story. Anyway, and so that was interesting. And then all of a sudden it was like, thank you for your feedback. Here's chapter 2 and 3. And I was like, what? Anyway, I want to say we got together to connect back in late January, maybe early February. And what are we in? Middle of April right now. And we are 13 chapters and an epilogue finished. I mean, that's not only a great accomplishment for my lovely, productive, creative friend who I've been helping, but as someone who's been coaching and keeping them accountable. And the only way I really kept this project accountable was I kept listening and giving feedback in a timely manner. So they realized, oh, when I give this to her, she's going to listen and give me feedback. So I better keep moving. It's just having that support. And bringing this back to what you're talking about with singers, one of the things, especially with singers, that I do is there are a lot of projects that singers want to work on, and they have a lot of great aspirations and hopes and dreams of hitting those high notes in many different genres. You all are great about that. But like John said, you can't do it all at once. So when I talk about effective encouragement, when someone lays out what they want to do, I will kindly say, okay, but let's love it. You're fabulous. You're going to hit that. I got it. But let's really break this down and let's prioritize a little bit. You got to prioritize when you're working on goals. And also be realistic. Like I said, truthful, realistic accountability coaching with effective encouragement. Let's be realistic. And sometimes when you're putting goals together, that's really important as well. Okay? Because you, at the end of the day, to keep the positive momentum going and having purpose in what you're doing, you've got to tackle things that are in your realm of possibility. Okay? That doesn't mean you can't dream, and there might be something in the future. But for the immediate calendar of things, we got to tackle things that actually we can achieve. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's important with someone who's holding you accountable and being supportive, that they're actually not letting you dream too big as you're setting forth the first part of your process, so that they know that as you get going with these goals and you do accomplish them, you will have positive momentum. And obviously, then you can actually go for something maybe a little bit more aggressive, and that would be great. But you're not going to start out that way. And that's what someone who is holding you accountable is accountable themselves to do, is to be honest and realistic so that you are having a positive experience.
And this is why I think it's so important that we include your accountability in voiceschool.com, because it really does support our community of singers. Besides voiceschool.com, where can people reach you?
Well, if you have some interest and you would like to just give me an idea of where things are at, you can always email our front desk, which is frontdesk@johnhenny.com. And just, let me know your thoughts. And then perhaps we can, work together. Again, I have folks that work in different ways. Some folks have a single session. They need a couple of ideas, a little bit of encouragement, and that's basically what they need at the time. Other folks might have a project they're working on and they want, kind of a series of sessions to keep moving forward. And so that's how we work together. But mostly it's really kind of an assessment of what is working for you. And that is something that we can do together and quite easily and quite quickly. It's easy for me to see what needs to be done. Again, I have a lot of experience with voice teachers, singers, performers, folks that are very much in the creative side of things, audio and video, and design. And I do work with some folks that are in life coaching to just kind of keep them moving forward, or maybe folks that have changed careers. So I have some folks that are a little bit outside the realm of what we would call the productive creative, but for the most part, I love working with folks that are a lot like, my significant other, that have, dreams and aspirations and putting together content and performing and just what brings them joy. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, working within the realm of music and singing and projects, that's what brings you joy. So part of this is not just completing a project. Part of this is about taking care of yourself and where you are in your life and what you want to accomplish. And it also gives you purpose and makes you better for those that you are serving. Okay, so don't forget about that. The best you can be makes sure that you're the best you for those that you are also helping and serving. And that's why I really enjoy this sort of category of folks, if you will, our great community of singers and teachers.
Great, Tracee. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and watch out for bulldogs in the hallway.
Yes, I will. Thank you. I'll see you soon.